Welcome back to Sherlock Holmes and Jack the Ripper. And we found a note in a garbage can. We taped it all together and we read it. Now let's see if the policeman here has any more to say.
Yes, Doctor.
Can you tell me any more about the murders that we've been investigating?
So, how far along are the investigations into these two recent murders?
Everyone around here believes both crimes were committed by the same man. But as for the Hanbury Street and Bucks Row crimes, nobody has heard or seen a thing.
All right. I've got some information for you that I've found.
By the way, have you heard of a Dr. Tumblety?
No. Is it important?
Yes. Well, no, maybe. Actually, I don't know. I have heard about this man, his frequent nocturnal outings and bizarre behaviour.
What does this chap look like, Doctor? And where can we find him?
Okay. Well, he was staying at the lodging house.
The last I heard was that he was staying at Finley's place, the man who was looking for me a few days ago.
It would greatly assist us if you could ask Finley what your strange associate looks like. We could then see if the description matches any witness accounts.
Yeah, maybe I should have done that first, eh? All right.
I will take my leave, Humphreys.
Goodbye, Doctor.
Well, that was kind of short. This is Doctor. All right, let's head down the street. Let's see. That was probably this way. Down here. And down this way. Finley!
There is a strong smell of gas. It seems to be coming from the abandoned building.
Gas? That's odd. Wasn't that guy in the tavern asking for a gas man?
Good evening, Finley. How are you?
Oh, good evening, Doctor. So. And you?
Oh, I'm fine, but man, that gas is pretty strong.
It smells of gas here.
You might say, Doctor, without wanting to speak ill of the force, I have to wonder if the police are up to something.
What do you mean?
Well, I was outside yesterday evening when the light went out at my place, and a gas smell came from the abandoned building across from my place. And a minute later, the police arrived and was snooping all around like it was them who hit the gas before arriving.
Pretty odd. Say, I've got some questions about that tenant you told me about.
Have things sorted themselves out with your strange tenant?
Don't talk about it, Doctor. That man is truly bizarre. He goes to the most sordid locations once night falls. 3 days ago, my wife told me she saw him come in with blood-stained clothes and a fearsome look.
Can you tell me what he looks like?
Interesting. What does he look like, and how old is he?
Oh, he's my age, give or take, so the other side of 50. He's always dressed in a striking manner with an American hat. He's big, close to 5'11", I'd say. He has a strange voice, not just his accent, see, his voice.
Okay. Thanks.
Very well. Goodbye for now, Finley.
Goodbye, Doctor.
Now then, let's go to the police station.
It's kind of funny that back then they considered 5'11" tall. Well, we do have an information to give the policeman now, so let's pay him a visit. Hello.
Yes, Doctor.
Got some information for you on this Tumblety.
Tumblety is a man around 5'11", about 55 years old, extravagantly dressed and with a rather distinctive voice. He boards at Finley's. You should know where that is, as the police were there only yesterday. Their arrival coincided with a strange gas leak.
Ah, yes, I know where you mean. Indeed, there was an odd affair with the gas. It was rather unsettling. We were searching for a well-known scoundrel who was ratted out by Squibby, the chap we followed and saved from the pack a few days ago. This thug, No Pity Bluto, Must have been in the abandoned building in question. But there was no sign of him when we arrived. Furthermore, an inspector said that, given the smell, the thingamabob that supplies gas to the building was probably damaged. So we took no risks and were called away somewhere else.
That's odd. You didn't call a gas company? Okay, a couple things here. Watson didn't tell him that he thought this guy was a doctor, which might be important since these murders look like they're done by a professional. The other thing is he didn't mention that we know where this Bluto is. He's in the tavern, hiding in that room.
I will take my leave, Humphreys.
Goodbye, Doctor.
Well, it would seem that I have all the information I need for my investigation. Anyway, this fellow Bluto at the Wasp's Nest is rather shady and doesn't look like he'll want to cooperate. I'd be better off returning to Baker Street. Holmes will certainly know what to do. And besides, I am worn out.
Oh, you big baby. All right, so we're heading back to Baker Street.
Let's go back to Baker Street. Home, sweet home. There we are, Holmes. I've told you in great detail everything that happened last night.
Excellent work, Watson. We shall now be prepared to answer a few questions about the horrible murder in Hanbury Street.
Do you think we are now in a position to find out the identity of the murderer of these two women?
No, I don't think so. It's outside of our scope and not our responsibility. As much as you've done for Leather Apron and the affair with the pills, our mission is to help the police by ensuring that they don't get caught up following false leads and to point them in the right direction. Let us start from what we know with some certitude. As you have just said, it is almost certain that the same person killed the Bucks Row and Hanbury Street victims. The reason to assume as much are numerous, and I shan't elaborate here. What do these two victims have in common?
Well, that's pretty easy, I think. Oh, here, we got a question. Well, they didn't have anything in common. Well, we know that's not true. They knew people in common. That could very well be. But for sure, they had the same profession.
It's true these two women were in the same profession, but...
Indeed, Watson. These two women were both prostitutes. That is of vital importance, Watson.
My memory from your examination of the scene is rather hazy. Didn't you say something about the killer's frame of mind?
I was talking about the victim's possessions that were placed on the ground and the rings missing from Annie Chapman's fingers. This killer is a cunning predator, comes from a rather humble background and shows steely self-control in carrying out the murders.
Something is puzzling me, Holmes. Richardson's testimony contradicts the time of death given by Dr. Phillips, which also matches my own, 4:30 a.m.
And yes, we shall confirm that, Watson, and attempt to determine the precise time of death. In order to do that, we will need to place everyone involved on a timeline. Only after that will we be able to place the knife symbolizing our killer. Let's look at our timeline, Watson.
What are we doing, Holmes?
Let's look at our timeline, Watson.
Oh, I thought he had something more to say. Timeline. I think that's this over here, this board. Oh, this is different. Okay, so we have a timeline. And evidently, I think we need to have things put on the timeline. All right, so let's start with the estimated time of death, according to Watson and Phillips, the two doctors, is 4:30. So, and it's got a stethoscope silhouette here. Does that mean...
Let's put the time of death as assessed by Dr. Phillips on the timeline.
Oh, okay. So, 4:30?
The assessment of the time of the murder given by Dr. Phillips and yourself, Watson, 4:30 a.m.
Okay, and it's green, which means that's correct. So if it's red, it means that we picked the wrong one. So let's see, what else do we have here? We've got, well, the only thing we know for sure is the starting time for the two doctors and when Watson and I arrived at the scene. The rest of these, we have to determine where they go. So let's figure out what they are first. This has got a picture of a guy on it, so I'm assuming that's a person. That's a person. And then we have documentation. Testimony, maybe? Well, let's choose this one, see what it is. Oh, we have to find it. Okay. Well, let's look at this for a minute. Some of them were documents. That's a dialogue. So dialogue. Dialogue from who? Well, timeline. Let's see. Police station. Okay, that's the Richardson guy. And then I don't see... Well, we know that's one of them. But there was also documents, too. Let's look at those. Maybe that'll help out a little bit more. Old police report. Testimony of A. Caddish and testimony of E. Long. Now, these were the two testimonies that the police didn't think was important. But Sherlock does. So let's see what either one of those say. This one, testimony 5:20. There's a time of 5:15 and 5:30. All right, let's take the 5:13 first. And testimony. Here. Use this document as proof. All right, we'll do that. Okay, and then old police concerning certain arrests. This testimony is also relevant, so let's use that document. Okay, let's start with that. We'll get back here. Oh, it puts stuff on the timeline. Okay, that means that other piece was probably also important. It was the dialogue from this guy, this Richardson. So let's choose him. Whoops. Okay, it's not giving me anything. All right, let's go back. Okay, we'll take what we've got. All right, so Miss Long, Mr. Kadosh, that was the first one.
Our next witness is Albert Kadosh.
Okay. And what was that? If I remember, that was it 5? Wasn't he 5:30? I'm trying to remember. I'm gonna have to go back and look. Okay, let's put him at 5:30. And it didn't light up. All right, what about her? She was...
Now, for the most important part, the testimony of Miss Long. She claims to have seen a woman speaking to a man near 29 Hanbury Street sometime around... What time, Watson?
Well, hers was 5:30. I think his was before, maybe. All right, 5:15. No. 5:30.
Let us assume, therefore, that Miss Long's testimony is, as is most certainly the case, true. She places her meeting with the victim at around 5:30, claiming to have heard a clock chime on the half hour at the moment when she enters the street.
Okay, so she was the first one. So then this guy was later. Let's take a look. Okay, 5:15, 5:20. 4:27 on the morning of 5:15 or 5:20. Okay. Okay, so 5:15 it's not. How about 5:20? No? Oh, I don't know. Hang on, let's go back. Kadosh. Witness resides, blah, 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 blah. On the morning of murder, the witness got up at 5:15 a.m. and went into the yard where the latrine was. It was 5:20 a.m. then. I mean, back when he passed in front of the 5:32? Is it 5:32? Let's look.
Kadosh leaves the garden, enters his house, then leaves for work, seeing the clock on the Spitalfields church showing 5:32.
Okay, so that was 5:32. And I got them on top of each other and I can't move them. Okay, so next, let's see, those were the two witnesses. Then we had the third witness. The third witness was Richardson. So where is he? Oh, when I clicked on that, we got some shoes. Okay, so Richardson leaves his mother's place. Richardson arrives at his mother's place. So this one would be first.
Now, let's put the Richardsons' arrival and departure times on the timeline.
Okay, and so we just read that. $4:45. Okay. Okay, there we... No. Wrong pair of shoes. There we go. All right, so 4:45. And then his... that was when he arrived at his mother's. Quarter to 5. Five minutes later, does that sound right? So 5 minutes later, so 4:45 and 4:50.
Despite the great respect I have for Dr. Phillips and the value I place on our friendship, my deepest conviction is that both of you are mistaken, and that Richardson is in the right, and that these two testimonies put down in writing have real worth.
But how? Explain yourself, Holmes.
Remember how you assessed the time of death? You touched the fingers and body of the victim, but it was remarkably cold for this time of year. In addition, the corpse had been drained of bodily fluids. Its heat retention was therefore no longer the same as that of an intact corpse.
Egad! You're right, Holmes.
Oh, I've had some time to research, Watson.
Given these facts, my first diagnosis may have been off by half an hour, perhaps even an hour.
Thus, we can confirm Richardson's statement and establish that the murder was committed after 4:50 a.m. and not before 4:30 a.m.
Okay, so now we've got the second guy, Kadash. Mr. Kadash is in his garden for a few minutes, then he goes back in and hears voices. Okay.
Let's place this symbol that represents Kadosh on the timeline.
$5:20. Okay, so he went to the latrine. It was then 5:20. Okay. So, 5.
Albert Kadosh goes down into his garden at approximately 5:20, and on re-entering his home, hears voices in number 29's garden.
Okay, and then Mr. Kadosh hears a fall against the garden fence, and that would have been, well, I don't know. It should have been just a few minutes after that, right? Four minutes. Okay.
Let's place this symbol that represents Kadosh on the timeline.
All right, so that would be about 5:24, be 4 minutes, right?
Kadosh goes back down into his garden approximately 4 minutes after having left it, and hears the sound of an impact against the wooden fence.
Okay, so that means that the two doctors were wrong, and all we have left is Holmes. So
he left the station at 6 o'clock, and it took us 20 minutes to arrive at Hanbury Street.
So 6:20.
Our arrival at the scene occurred at around 6:20. Given the distance separating the two locations, we can deduce that the corpse wasn't discovered after 6 o'clock, and therefore that the murder must have been committed before. Excellent, Watson. All our people are now in place.
Yes, but Holmes, Miss Long claims to have seen the victim at around 5:30. But according to Kadosh, someone, most certainly the victim and her murderer, was already in the garden at 5:30.
Excellent observation, Watson. It must be noted, however, that these two witnesses, Long and Kadosh, saw the time shown on the clocks in the area, which are often inaccurate and went by their empirical and, in this case, erroneous estimate of how much time had passed. Thus, neither of these two times can be considered reliable.
Do you mean to say that these two testimonies might match?
Indeed. Let's put Miss Long's meeting with the victim at 2 minutes before 5:30.
2 minutes before 5:30.
Let's add Miss Long's meeting with the victim at 2 minutes before 5:30 a.m. Mr. Kadosh claims to have passed by the Spitalfields Church at 5:32, which, given the distance from 27 Hanbury Street, would mean he was still at home at 5:31. Let's therefore put the end of his testimony at 5:31.
Okay.
Miss Long heard the man say to the victim, "Will you..." To which the victim responded yes, which would suggest that an agreement was reached and that the transaction was imminent. They then proceeded to enter the garden, which puts the voices heard by Kadosh at 5:29.
So this one's got to be a little bit later than he thought, by the same amount of time.
We had thought that Kadosh had left 27 Hanbury Street at 5:31 after having heard an impact against the fence. Thus, 2 minutes passed between the moment when Kadosh entered the house after having been in the garden the first time and the moment when he returns to go out again and leave for work. How long did he estimate this interval to be? 3 to 4 minutes. In light of all this, Watson, we can finally establish the time of Chapman's murder. Now, place the knife at the exact time.
Okay, so it should be 5:30, because it was between 5:29 and 5:31.
Now then, taking into account that the local clock isn't exact and that a young man was off by a minute or two in his estimations of his comings and goings, we can confirm Miss Long's testimony and place the time of the crime at approximately 5:30.
But in that case, Holmes, the man that Miss Long saw is none other than...
That's right, Watson. It was the Whitechapel killer.
To think that Miss Long and Kadosh were only a few feet away from him.
Indeed, Watson. Had Miss Long passed just a little closer to the victim and her assassin, or had the young Kadosh popped his head over the fence out of curiosity, the killer would most certainly already be behind bars.
That's some stroke of luck he had there.
I couldn't agree more, Watson. But his luck didn't end there, given the mutilations inflicted upon this poor woman. What must be considered above all is the killer's obvious wish to remove one and only one specific organ. His surgery pinpointed the exact spot, avoiding superfluous incisions. This suggests the man possesses at least a minimal anatomical knowledge.
Are you suggesting a doctor or a butcher?
Perhaps, but the possibilities are still too broad to conclude with any certainty. Now for the motive. Despite my almost complete lack of practical experience on the subject, I have a rather precise idea of the usefulness of a uterus and a vagina. Nonetheless, once they are separated from their usual envelope, I am more circumspect as to the uses one can make of them. What do you think, Watson?
That's a good question.
We need a board, Watson.
We need a board. What's that mean? We already have a board. Are you talking about...
There is nothing more to do here.
Okay. What the hell does he mean then? Oh, there's another board over here. Oh, okay. Here we go. So, these are possible motives that we had selected before. But I noticed they all say no. So we have to give some more information to them. Specimen for the sole purpose of study. Okay, study, students, and specimens. That would be this one. In the medical university environment, students easily have access to a number of specimens.
Perhaps it was intended as a study specimen.
I have little faith in that theory. Hardly anything was taken from the Bucks Row victim.
Okay. So the next thing is black magic. Yeah, there's no indication that it would suggest a type of a ritual.
Black magic?
Watson, this line of investigation is far too vague. We don't have a single clue in support of such a motive. We can eliminate this hypothesis.
Okay. Cannibalism. Dementia can push men to commit incredibly vile acts. Well, cannibalism is a vile act. To supply human organ trafficking, that doesn't quite fit. For this motive, it would have been easy to quickly remove something. So that's more of the trophy. So this would be a trophy.
A desire for some sort of morbid trophy.
I'd be inclined to dismiss this motive. If this were the case, why would nothing have been removed from the Bucks Row victim?
Okay, money and organ trafficking. So they're selling organs. That would go there.
Money, quite simply.
Even if this motive seems incongruous, we're in no position to deny or affirm it until we know whether a market for human organs exists.
Okay, and that leaves the vile act.
Holmes, what if it was cannibalism?
Even if the idea is unbearable, we can't ignore it as a possibility.
All right, I don't think the university has anything to do with it. I don't think black magic is part of this. Cannibalism could be. Trophy, as we've mentioned before, the poor people don't have anything really. Money and the trafficking, that's a good motive.
Elementary. What emerges from these possible motives for having removed the uterus from the second victim is that they implied that the killer could have carried out the same thing on the Bucks Row victim, yet didn't. This brings us to a terrible conclusion. Our killer has evolved in the space of only a few days, and if that's the case, had he already struck before the first murder to which we attribute him? And if the killer strikes again, what atrocity awaits his next victim?
We have to stop him, Holmes.
We shall do our best. This recent business of jars filled with formalin and of the American doctor might be a lead. Watson, inquire among medical circles to ascertain if there is a black market for human organs. The chances are slim, but this must be pursued.
Very well. What about you, Holmes?
I will send word to Inspector Aberline regarding our recent conclusions. I should also like to become a gas man and pay a visit to Bluto at the Wasp's Nest.
Understood, Holmes. I think one of my old university colleagues who works at the London hospital will be able to help me. I shall write him a note at once. He should be able to see me during the day. Afterwards, shall we meet here?
Yes, Watson. See you later, and good luck.
All right.
I must get to the London hospital, where my old university colleague works.
Okay, well, we're back to Watson, and I think this is the perfect time to take a break. I hope to see you in the next episode. Ta-ta for now.